President Meta praised the excellent relations between the two countries and expressed deep gratitude for the 30-year-old support Germany has given in support of Albania and its integration in Euro-Atlantic structures. Meta appreciated deeply the attention that President Steinmeier and Germany give to the developments in the Western Balkans. Focusing on the latest developments in the region, the two presidents shared the same opinion that the achievement of the Prespa agreement is a successful example that encourages both Kosovo and Serbia to normalize relations and reach a lasting agreement in the best interest of peace, stability, and European integration. Meanwhile, President Steinmeier assured President Meta that Germany will continue to be an important partner in the integration process of Albania and all the countries of the region, and will assist them in furthering their reforms for a sustainable economic development as well as strengthening of the rule of law. We move on to another top story. The U.S. Embassy has reacted about the last decision of the opposition parties to relinquish the parliamentary mandates. According to the embassy, threats by the opposition parties undermine the basic principles of democracy. A healthy democracy requires an opposition that operates constructively with constitutional institutions. Threats by the Democratic Party, the Socialist Movement for Integration, and other opposition parties to abandon their mandates in Parliament undermine the basic principles of democracy and subvert the important progress Albania has achieved on rule of law and responsible governance. The United States call on all members of the Parliament to raise above the political fray, reject calls to relinquish their mandates, and defend the ideals and principles central to any vibrant democracy. If you fail to do your job, you fail the people you are privileged to serve, said the embassy. European Member of Parliament Eduard Kukan commented yesterday on the latest developments in Albania. Mr. Kukan confirmed that currently the situation in Albania is tense, while adding that he doesn't agree with violence, referring to February 16 protest in Tirana, which saw a number of incidents take place. He says that the fact that the situation has become tense is a cause for concern for Albania's future. Meanwhile, Mr. Kukan adds that Albania needs constructive political dialogue between all political parties. Otherwise, it will hardly move on issues the Albanian people expect the most, such as the EU integration processes and the reform processes. Member of the European Parliament, Kukan underscored that Parliament is the place where the opposition plays its role. Kukan believes that boycott is not the answer to the situation. Therefore, I do not think that the next boycott of the Parliament is the right solution to the problem that Albanian people are facing. Albania has many experienced politicians which should know how to find solution to the political problems. Member of the European Parliament Eduard Kukan was quoted as saying. The president of the American Chamber of Commerce, Mark Crawford, reacted yesterday regarding the situation created in Albania due to the opposition's protest and how the situation is affecting the business. According to him, lack of stability affects investment. Everything that gives stability is a plus, and everything that creates an environment that is not sustainable is a minus. It is not that we will not invest, but we will wait. Not only the citizens but politicians also should create a positive image. There will always be disagreements, whether in business or in politics. But if the disagreements create a government collapse, it is different from the situation, said Crawford. Albanian population is shrinking rapidly and aging population is being increased, according to the Albanian Institute of Statistics. According to the data provided by Instat, in January of 2019, population of the age group 0 to 24 decreased by over 31,000 persons in comparison to 2018. The biggest decrease pertains to the age group 15 to 24, with more than 17,000 persons. Meanwhile, INSTA declared that shrinking of this age group is related even to high flow of immigration and lower number of births in 1997, when Albania experienced massive wave of migration due to civil disobedience. Instat also revealed that the lower number of births is rapidly shrinking the number of babies born per year. Changes in population compared to 2018 indicate increase in the population of the age group over 55 years old by 30,000 persons more compared to the previous year. Furthermore, analysts of the Bank of Albania warn that consequences coming from aging population will affect all activities in the country, from education, economy, domestic production, standard of living, says Instat. That's all about the news. Radio Tirana. In the minutes to come, press review. We start today's press with Panorama daily paper writing that after Brussels, the EU ambassador to Tirana, Luigi Soreca, also reacted regarding the decision of the Albanian opposition to boycott the parliament and renounce their electoral seats. Soreca said that this doesn't take the country towards the right direction. On the contrary, it goes against the citizens' interest. The EU wants the majority and the opposition to dialogue and reduce the tension. Soreca underlined that it is a basic right of the Albanian citizens to engage in peaceful demonstrations, but what we saw was dozens of protesters who unfortunately used violence and caused damage to the public property. This is clearly unacceptable and a loss of chance. The parliament is the base of every European democracy. It is the place where politicians must discuss debates on reforms and respective developments. The parliament should not be boycotted. We heard the opposition parties saying that individual members of the parliament would renounce their current mandates. Every member of the parliament has the right to decide what will happen with the responsibility they have taken in front of the voters in order to defend their positions in parliament. This is their basic right, said Soreca. It is clear, however, that the renouncement is counterproductive for Albania and goes against the citizens' interest. 93% of the Albanian people want to join the EU, which means that there are voters from all sides of the parliament. The country is very committed to continue the reforms. Next June, the progress that has been done so far with the reforms will be evaluated. First of all, the judiciary reform, which is the core of the entire revival of the Albanian society. This is what the opposition's and the majority efforts should be focused on. Establishing all the judiciary reform institutions, especially the Special Prosecution Against Corruption and the National Bureau of Investigation. This is an important objective and must be leading the minds of all political parties, he said. Boycotting the parliament doesn't take you towards this direction. We invite the government and the opposition to engage in constructive dialogue with the purpose to overcome the current political situation and make sure that the country continues its path of reforms. There is no more time to lose. The time is now, Soreca was quoted as saying. We pass on to Kohajon daily paper writing that President of the Republic gave an interview for Deutsche Welle in Berlin where he made comments about the renouncement of the mandates by the Albanian opposition. Meta says that any extreme action affects not only democracy but also the strengthening of institutions. President Meta wants the majority to realize the responsibilities it does have to govern the country. I do think that any extreme action does not serve democracy, does not help strengthen institutions, and does not give help to the European integration of the country, which is the wish of every Albanian citizen. It is time the opposition took a step back, but I think it's time for the majority took 2 more steps back. The government and the Prime Minister who have to realize that the key responsibilities for the country's governance are theirs. It is their duty to give the first example in respecting the Constitution and the boundaries that the Constitution of the Republic of Albania has set for the government, Meta was quoted as saying. And finally, Mapo Daily Paper underlines that European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini said that she will not call a new round of talks between Pristina and Belgrade until authorities in Kosovo lift or suspend tariffs on goods from Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. But Kosovo Prime Minister Ramush Haradinaj said that for the time being, the tariffs will be not lifted. Prime Minister Haradinaj stated that any possible agreement with Serbia cannot touch the borders. Relations between Prime Minister Haradinaj and the ruling coalition partners continue to be aggravated by various opinions on tariffs on Serbia. Kosovo Parliament Speaker Veseli, during a solemn session in honor of the 11th anniversary of independence, called for the suspension of the tariffs and maintaining relations with the allies. The negotiation process remains suspended due to Serbia's refusal to continue talks without lifting tariffs by Kosovo government set almost 3 months ago. That's all about Press Review, Radio Tirana.
Albania under the EU integration process. At the margin of the Warsaw Conference on the Middle East situation, the acting Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs of Albania, Gent Tsakaj, held a bilateral meeting with Hungary's Foreign Minister, Peter Szijjártó. Both interlocutors exchanged views on the progress of the European integration process of Albania. Acting Minister Tsakaj focused particularly on the achievements Albania has made, especially with regard to the steps taken in meeting the 5 priorities and conditions set by the European Council for opening the negotiations with the European Union. The Foreign Minister of Hungary, Szijjártó, congratulated Minister Tsakaj for the assignment and reconfirmed Hungary's support in the processes that Albania will engage in the coming months, especially with regard to the European integration process. In the bilateral plan, both interlocutors focused on the need for strengthening of legal and economic cooperation between Albania and Hungary. Minister Szijjártó invited the acting Minister Tsakaj for an official visit to Budapest, an invitation that Minister Tsakaj welcomed with pleasure. Radio Tirana listeners, that was all about Albania under the EU integration process. And the last feature for today, Albanian hits through years. Radio Tirana listeners, in today's musical program, we have selected one of the best female voices of Albania, and she is Eli Farah. In the minutes to come, you're going to enjoy her songs.
Muito This is Global Community Radio, Channel 1, News and More. Portions rebroadcast on KFZR-LP, Fraser Park, KIEZ-LP, Monroe, KLQS-LP, Agua Dulce, KPDO, Pescadero, WLRI-LP, Gap, WMUU-LP, Madison, WRAQ-LP, Angelica, WXDR-LP, New Orleans, and WXIR-LP, Rochester.
This is the World Radio Network. Next, the day's news from Israel Radio in Jerusalem.
You're listening to the English language news of Khan, the Israeli Public Broadcasting Corporation.
It's 8 p.m. in Israel, Wednesday, February the 20th, 2019. In the headlines, Prime Minister Netanyahu postpones a Moscow meeting with Russian President Putin as he seeks and offers a deal to the Jewish Home Party in a push to form a right-wing bloc. The heads of the Israel Resilience and Yesh Atid parties engage in intensive negotiations on a possible merger as Orly Levy Abekassis presents her Gesher party list. IDF aircraft strike a Hamas position in the Gaza Strip after explosive balloons are launched at southern Israel. A day after mass protests against anti-Semitism in France, a Holocaust monument is desecrated in the center of the country. And train drivers disrupt service in the north in an apparent row over work hours. The weather outlook, no significant change today and tomorrow. Good evening. This is Nomi Segal with the news. With less than 24 hours to go before the final deadline to submit party lists to the Central Election Committee, dramatic developments in efforts to form mergers in both the right and center blocs. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who postponed a trip to Moscow to take on the political campaign, reached understandings with the Jewish Home National Union Party today, promising cabinet portfolios and a reserved slot on the Likud roster if the Jewish Home Party's Central Committee approves tonight a merger with the far-right Otzma Yehudit Party. All this as part of Netanyahu's efforts to form a right-wing bloc to make every ballot count. Under the reported deal, if the merger with the smaller party is approved by Jewish Home and Netanyahu forms the next government, the head of Jewish Home would get the education portfolio, the head of National Union, the housing ministry. In addition, the representative from the United List would get one of the reserved slots on the Likud roster, 28. Jewish Home would also have a seat on the security cabinet, and the deal also calls for passage of the expanded Norwegian law, which would allow more government ministers to give up their Knesset seats in order to clear the way for other candidates until now who were in less realistic spots. Meanwhile, intensive negotiations were underway today between Benny Gantz, leader of Israel Resilience, and Yair Lapid, head of Yesh Atid, regarding a possible joint run in the election. The two were said to have met for several hours at the Savion home of a close associate of Lapid's. A Khan reporter says that among the issues on the agenda were a rotation agreement for the role of prime minister or senior cabinet minister, a shared platform, and more. According to reports, chances were high that the two would work out an agreement that could also pull in former IDF chief of staff Gabi Ashkenazi. A merger between Israel Resilience and Yesh Atid would leave Orly Levy Abekassis and her Gesher party out of a merger with the center bloc. And Levy Abekassis this evening presented the list of her Gesher party, and the number 2 spot is Gil Smama, who is Director General of the Pensioners Ministry. He was followed by Dedi Perlmutter, the former Global Vice President of Intel, Dr. Dan Shacham, a former diplomat, and educator Chagai Levi. Jewish Home Party activists this evening convened a news conference urging their party leader not to agree to the proposed merger with Otzma Yehudit and to accept the deal suggested by Netanyahu. Reporter Mark Weiss spoke earlier with Professor Shmuel Sandler, a professor of political science at Bar-Ilan University's Basis Center, and asked him why a union between Jewish Home, National Union, and Otzma Yehudit is so important to Netanyahu.
Well, Mr. Netanyahu is afraid that some of the right-wing votes, since they're not going to pass the threshold, of which is today 3.25%, and in fact means 4 members of the Knesset, 4 Knesset seats, if they don't pass, then all these votes go down the drain, and as a matter of fact, they are passed to other parties, and after you divide the 120, probably it will go, part of it at least will go to the left.
Isn't it possible, though, that people who were thinking of voting for the Jewish Home National Union will now rethink because they don't want to vote for a party, an alliance that includes such extremist, racist groups, and maybe instead they'll vote for the new right or the Likud?
Right, you're definitely right, and this is something that the Jewish Home understood, and even Smotrich from the National Union, who represent the settlers, understands it. But apparently, the pressure coming from the Prime Minister is so strong that it had its impact. He also pressured them through rabbis, ideological figures of the religious Zionist camp, and they also put the pressure on Mr. Peretz and Mr. Smotrich, and as a result, they might give in. They give hard conditions to Otzma, but Otzma understood, and they wanted money to get in, so they agreed to the places that they offered there. I think it's number 5 and number 8. So this is the situation. But they'll definitely lose out of it, because a lot of the more moderate religious Zionists, especially from the center of Israel, like Ra'anana, Givat Shmuel, and all these places, might not vote for the Bayit Yehudi.
And Knesset member Smotrich himself has said quite clearly that this is a temporary arrangement, and the minute after the elections, the party will split again, leaving Otzma. Isn't this, couldn't this be interpreted as deceiving the electorate, cheating even?
Yes, I think so. And once you're, even if it's what they call a technical union, once you have the union and you legitimized Otzma, then you are being tainted with that. So, and that's why he said to Mr. Netanyahu, why don't you take them into your party? You have 30 seats. We are a small party. And Netanyahu disagreed exactly because of that reason.
What about the argument that by this alliance, the Jewish Home is allowing the overtly racist followers of Rabbi Meir Kahane back into the Knesset?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the big dilemma, and I think that they are going to pay dearly for it. Whatever they're going to gain from Otzma, they're going to lose to the New Right or other parties, but that doesn't concern Mr. Netanyahu. He's looking now at the camp. He wants the right-wing camp to be as strong as they can be.
Well, it will concern him if it backfires to such an extent that the new alliance even won't pass the threshold.
No, they'll pass. I think they'll pass because, but not with them. But whatever they gain, they're going to lose to somebody else. So, in terms of the gush of the bloc, of the right-wing bloc, apparently Netanyahu thinks that it's important that he doesn't lose any votes. See, the right wing still lives under the trauma of what happened in 1992, where they had, in the popular vote, they had more votes than the left. But because that time Tchia did not pass the threshold, so these votes went down the drain, and as a result, Mr. Rabin and Labour succeeded in having what's called a stumbling block. In other words, they, together with the Arab, they passed the 61, and as a result, Mr. Rabin became president, and then prime minister, and then, of course, it went further to Oslo. So this is the trauma that the right-wing bloc is always speaking about it, and maybe it's a trauma that they live under.
Let's talk about another possible trauma. Let's assume that Yesh Atid and Israel Resilience, led by Gantz, manages to unite together with Gabi Ashkenazi. At this late stage, is there anything the Prime Minister and the other right-wing parties can do to respond to such an alliance?
No, I think it's too late. Maybe, I'm not familiar if maybe they have a secret plan to doing it, but they definitely would have had to be some, lined out, so by tonight they can respond. I don't think they have such a plan, a draw plan, yes. And but on the other hand, I don't think that they. The polls so far don't show that the combination between Lapid and Gantz makes them the plurality party. And this is the big fear of Netanyahu, because Mr. Netanyahu is afraid that if Gantz and Lapid come out first, they'll go to the president, and the president, when we know there's a feud between Mr. Rivlin and Netanyahu, an old feud, even though they belong to the same ideology, he will allow Gantz to have the first shot at putting together a government. And that is the big scare for Netanyahu.
Professor Shmuel Sandler of Bar-Ilan University's Basis Center. As we heard earlier, Prime Minister Netanyahu postponed his scheduled meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, scheduled for tomorrow, in order to focus on efforts to try to ensure right-wing unity before tomorrow night's deadline for the presentation of party lists for the April election. Netanyahu and Putin are expected to speak on the phone tomorrow morning, and a new date for a face-to-face meeting will be set. Thursday's meeting was meant to focus on regional affairs, the situation in Syria, and the strengthening of the security coordination between Israel and Russia. It would have been the first time the two leaders met in Moscow since the downing of a Russian plane by Syrian air defenses in September, which Moscow blamed on Israel. A source close to the Kremlin described Netanyahu's cancellation of the summit with Putin as very strange. The source told Khan that Netanyahu waited a long time for this meeting, and even if the Kremlin understands the Israeli Prime Minister's considerations in postponing the talks, it is unlikely that a new date will be set for the near future. In other political news, in the speech he gave last night after presenting the Israel Resilience Party's Knesset list, Benny Gantz said that Prime Minister Netanyahu had ruled Israel single-handedly for a decade by means of incitement, deception, and intimidation. He said that while he had lain with his soldiers in muddy trenches on freezing cold nights, Netanyahu had left Israel to learn English and to practice it at posh cocktail parties. Prime Minister Netanyahu responded on Facebook and Twitter, Benny Gantz, shame on you. As a soldier and officer in Sayeret Matkal, the elite IDF reconnaissance unit, I risked my life time after time for Israel's security that you want to endanger with unilateral withdrawals and with your support for the dangerous nuclear agreement with Iran. Reserve Major General Tal Russo, the former head of the IDF Southern Command, who has joined the Labour Party in the number 2 slot, reserved by its leader, Avi Gabai, spoke at a joint news conference today with Gabay. He said his decision to enter politics was a difficult one, and what guided him was his love of country. He said that it is possible to act differently in the face of security challenges, first and foremost to separate from the Palestinians. United Torah Judaism presented its list for the Knesset. In the top 5, Yaakov Litzman, Moshe Gafni, Meir Porush, and Yaakov Tessler. Yisrael Beitenu chair Avigdor Lieberman presented his party's Knesset list last night. It's headed by MK Oded Forer, followed by journalist Evgeny Sova, businessman Eli Avidar, former MK Yulia Malinovsky, MK Hamad Amar, and former Director General of the Immigration and Absorption Ministry, Alex Kushner. The Greenleaf pro-marijuana list announced it will not run in the upcoming Knesset elections. Its chairman said that it intends to establish a civilian organization to advance legalization of cannabis. In France, a monument to Holocaust victims was desecrated in the center of the country a day after dozens of Jewish graves were vandalized in a cemetery near Strasbourg. Meanwhile, French police have arrested the man suspected in the verbal assault of prominent French Jewish philosopher Alain Finkielkraut over the weekend in Paris. The incident, which was captured on video, took place during a yellow vest protest, and the man's face was exposed. He was identified as a 36-year-old convert to Islam and a known pro-Palestinian activist. Thousands of people joined demonstrations across France yesterday to protest against the spate of anti-Semitic attacks in the country. Demonstrators marched under the slogan, "That's enough," in the capital and other cities. Figures from across the political spectrum joined the demonstrations. French President Emmanuel Macron is due to address leaders of the French Jewish community this evening. President Reuven Rivlin sent a message to his French counterpart expressing concern about the situation in France and his appreciation for Macron's response to it. Speaking to a visiting delegation from the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs of the Canadian Jewish Community today, Rivlin said that anti-Israel and anti-Semitic sentiments come and go in waves.
In spite of the excellent names that Israel has from all over the world, we have the problems of anti-Israelism and anti-Semitism. And what we are watching in these hours is something that comes and goes with waves, but it never stops. And I just now have sent a letter to the French president, really congratulating him, not congratulating, appreciating the feelings of the, and expressing the feelings of the Israeli people about what he's doing to stand against anti-Semitism in France, and it's very, very serious there as much as it is all over Europe.
President Reuven Rivlin. Reporter Mark Weiss spoke with Gil Tayeb, Vice President of CRIF, the umbrella organization of French Jewry, about last night's protests and the general situation in France.
It was a good demonstration. 20,000 people comes to say, "Hi, stop anti-Semitism" is a good thing. But because there is but we saw yesterday that the youth people were not here. And we saw all of the political parties speaking about anti-Semitism, but they are not agree, all of them, who is the origin of anti-Semitism. Yesterday, there was some songs, and nobody spoke to people. 20,000 people here, and we were there to listen and to hear how the French policy is going to fight the anti-Semitism. And yesterday, it was not. It was a kind of being all of all one way over, but we don't denounce who are the anti-Semitism in France, because we know, as a Jewish people in our community, that in France there is two kinds of anti-Semitism. It's the extreme right, fascism. They are anti-Semitism, and they come back. But there is an anti-Semitism from the extreme left and from the radical Muslims. And it's very difficult for these politicals to say the two things. All of them are, how do we say it, hemiplegic. They saw just on one direction. Someone speak about the extreme right, and some only for the extreme left and the integrally Muslims. But as a Jewish, we know that there are two fighting against the anti-Semitism. The new anti-Semitism is also the anti-Zionist, and it's very difficult now in France to hear people speaking and ask for truth.
Now, some of the people at last night's protest wore the yellow vests associated with the latest protest movement, and these were some of the people who had been involved in anti-Jewish verbal attacks on the famous French Jewish philosopher Alain Finkielkraut. Were you happy that some of the yellow vest protesters joined last night's rally?
Yes, because since the beginning of this movement, we know that the yellow are not all anti-Semitism, but inside of them there is anti-Semitism. From the 17th of November, the first day of the yellows, we saw people with slogans against you Jews, and nobody spoke about it. And we say inside of a yellow there is a very big problem now. They are people. They do their most to how to live better, and it's very, very important to have an answer of their problem. But inside of them, there are people. They are recuperate the movement, and inside of the recuperation is extreme left. They are speaking about anti-Zionist. We saw what they take and so to Finkielkraut. Go back to your country, Israel. And all this guy is an Islamist, and we know that he's an anti-Zionist, and in his mouth, anti-Zionist is anti-Semitism. And there are the others extreme right. Inside of the movement, they are anti-Semitism from the extreme right.
Now, the latest survey showed a significant increase in anti-Semitism in France. How does this change the day-to-day life for French Jews? Is it an exaggeration now to say that Jewish people in France are living in fear?
You know, the truth is the government of France. France is not an anti-Semitism country, but inside of the people of France, the anti-Semitism is growing up. From two sides, what I spoke: Muslims, radical Muslims, and the traditional anti-Semitism. And now all of the Jewish community is opening its eyes, and so that the problem is growing up. And we don't know how to fight, because there is a law in France. There is laws about it, but there is not the power, political power to speak and to designate who is the anti-Semitic and how to fight it. And it's the problem for the Jewish community. Jewish community is now in front of a very, very big problem, and we, as responsible of the community and as parents, we don't know how we have to. What are we going to say to our child? What is the future in France? What is the future in Europe? It is very, very problem now.
Maybe they have a brighter future here in Israel. Many people here in Israel were surprised that there was not a significant increase in Aliyah following the terrible murders against French Jews at the kosher market, the shooting in the school in Toulouse, etc., etc. Were you surprised more French Jews haven't moved to Israel?
We know, and you're right. Since 2006, today, 11 Jews were murdered because they are Jews. And in fact, it's a very, very big problem, and it's early for the Jewish to know what doing. But now, what we saw in the community, in all the families, all people are thinking about what doing tomorrow. They were people they doesn't heard, and they never heard about going to another country and make the Aliyah. This problem now is in the families. All of them are speaking about. But they live here, and we spoke that we have to fight as a French people, and we have to think to our future as a Jewish people. And this is the new challenge.
Gil Tayeb, Vice President of CRIF, the umbrella organization of French Jewry. The U.S. Ambassador to Poland, Georgette Mosbacher, has called on Israel's acting foreign minister, Israel Katz, to apologize to Poland for his remarks in which he said that Poles suckled anti-Semitism with their mother's blood, quoting former Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. I just felt that two strong allies like Israel and Poland, of course they are strong allies of the United States, shouldn't be using that kind of rhetoric, she said. We are too important to each other not to work these things out. Coming up, IDF aircraft targeted a Hamas position in the southern Gaza Strip after explosive balloons are floated from Gaza toward Israel. But first, Daniela Spector, Tzipor Bayad, bird in hand.
You can now listen to the English news and all Kan Reka broadcasts live anywhere on your mobile phone on the Kan OD app. Download the app for access to all programs, live broadcasts, and a variety of music channels all in one place. Look for Kan OD in the app stores.
Taking a midway look at the headlines this evening, Prime Minister Netanyahu postpones a Moscow meeting with Russian President Putin as he offers a deal to the Jewish Home Party in a push to form a right-wing bloc. Activists in Jewish Home urged the party leader to reject the deal, which calls for it to merge with the far-right Otzma Yehudit party. The heads of Israel Resilience and Yesh Atid parties engage in intensive negotiations on a possible merger as Orly Levy Abekassis presents her Gesher party list. IDF aircraft strike a Hamas position in the Gaza Strip after explosive balloons are launched at southern Israel. A day after mass protests against anti-Semitism in France, a Holocaust monument is desecrated in the center of the country. And train drivers disrupt service in the north this morning in an apparent row over work hours. The weather outlook, no significant change today and tomorrow. IDF aircraft targeted a Hamas position in the southern Gaza Strip this evening in response to the earlier launching of explosive balloons toward Israel. Earlier, Palestinians reported that unmanned aircraft fired at least one missile at an open area east of Al-Burj. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Earlier today, an explosive balloon was launched from the Gaza Strip toward the Eshkol region. No damage was caused and no one was hurt. In addition, a cluster of dozens of balloons bearing a fake drone landed in a field in the Eshkol region. A month ago, a similar cluster bearing an actual booby-trapped drone landed in the Gaza periphery. The terrorist alleged to have murdered Israeli teen Ori Ansbacher, Arafat Irfaya, has had his remand extended today by 8 days, despite the fact that police asked to extend it by 12. The Jerusalem Magistrates Court judge said that the findings of the investigation had been presented to the court and they lent credence to the reasonable suspicion that the murder was committed for nationalist reasons. In the course of the hearing, the suspect's lawyer complained that his client had allegedly been beaten by prison guards in the presence of an Israel security agency Shin Bet detective who was there to record his confession. Irfaya has been questioned at least 6 times thus far by Israel security agency agents. The ISA has not finished questioning him and is currently focused on trying to establish whether he had had any assistance in his flight to El Bira near Ramallah, which is where the security forces captured him. Muslim activists and Waqf officials tried to forcibly break through the Golden Gate on the Temple Mount last night for the second day in a row. 19 of them were arrested in clashes with police. Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas says that Israel's decision to offset from the tax revenues it transfers to the Palestinians the sum paid out in salaries to prisoners is a final nail in the coffin of the Paris Agreement, the economic accords between Israel and the Palestinians under the Oslo process. In remarks at a meeting of the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah, Abbas said that Israel is violating all of the agreements with the Palestinian Authority, and this step is intended to step up the blockade of the Palestinian people in order to carry out the anticipated peace initiative of the Trump administration. Yesterday, Abbas announced that the Palestinian Authority would refuse to accept any of the tax revenue transfer in protest over the Israeli withholding of funds. The Israeli Security Cabinet this week approved withholding 500 million shekels. The United States Consulate General in Jerusalem, which serves Palestinians, is expected to be absorbed into the new U.S. Embassy in Israel in March, according to a U.S. official, giving a date for a merger that has been condemned by Palestinians. The decision to create a single diplomatic mission in Jerusalem was announced last October by the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who did not say at the time when this would take place. The U.S. official told Reuters that the merger of the consulate and the embassy would probably take place on March 4th or 5th, at which point the position of the consul general would end. U.S. President Donald Trump outraged the Arab world and stoked international concern in his recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital in December a year ago and moving the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in May. Palestinian leaders suspended ties with the U.S. administration after the embassy move. Asked This week about the merger, Nabil Abu Radena, a spokesman for the Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas, told Reuters that nothing had changed from their point of view. Contacts at the political level with the American administration have been cut off and will remain so until the American administration changes its positions on Jerusalem and the refugees, he said. However, he said there are still contacts at the security level to fight terrorism. The double murder of Tamar and Yehuda Kaduri, two relatives of the couple who are suspected of involvement in the murder last month, have been remanded in custody until next week. The central suspect will be held until Tuesday, and his wife, who is suspected of conspiracy and obstruction of the investigation, until Sunday. The two were arrested after police found discrepancies in testimony that they had given as witnesses, leading to their detention earlier this week. The bodies of the couple were found in their Armona Netziv apartment with signs of violence. The bodies were discovered after a family member came to check in on them after they had not been in touch for several days. Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon has signed an order to raise the tax on loose tobacco for rolling cigarettes, bringing it up to par with the purchase tax on regular cigarettes sold in packs. He did so after the High Court ruled that the products, which have the same health risk, should be taxed equally. Train services in northern Israel were thrown into chaos this morning as dozens of drivers and inspectors called in sick in an apparent protest over new work schedules. 30 drivers called in sick and some 24 trains were canceled. The Israel Railways management denounced the protest as irresponsible and unnecessary. The CEO of Israeli pharmaceutical firm Teva says that the coming year will continue to be challenging for the generic drug maker, but stressed that the company is meeting its ambitious cost-cutting and wholesale restructuring targets. We are totally on plan, Kari Schultz told reporters in Tel Aviv yesterday, his first news conference in the Israeli city since taking the reins of the company in November 2017. It's not a nice one, but we have declining revenues and had to lay off employees, but it's a realistic plan, and it's working now. Earlier, the company released a disappointing 2019 forecast showing continued revenue declines for its flagship multiple sclerosis drug Copaxone. The major restructuring plan that Teva put into place in 2017 to deal with its high debt and falling revenues involved a reorganization as well as massive global layoffs, including in Israel. Speaking to Kan 11, Schultz said that the painful measures were necessary and likened the situation to meeting one's mortgage to keep their home.
If you can't pay your mortgage, you're going to lose your house. So you better be able to pay your mortgage somehow.
You've been under a lot of pressure to find another solution rather than layoff. Had you considered any alternatives?
Yeah, so before we made the restructuring plan, we had, of course, considered all kind of alternatives, but there was really no alternative. If we did not reduce the worldwide cost base, we would not be able to survive as an independent company. With regards to the politicians, then in my point of view, it's my job to take care of Teva, and it's their job to take care of society. So I think it's a natural emotional reaction that you get disappointed when there's a downturn for a company. But of course, I think it's a better situation. I make sure the company gets out of trouble and gets financially stable, so it's a strong part of the Israeli economy. Because we followed the plan very nicely in 2018, people sort of thought, okay, now everything's going to get nice and rosy again. But they forgot about the fact that the restructuring plan is a 2-year plan, and the revenues will still be declining until we get into 20, when we will start to improve the situation. You can never promise anything long term because you never know what happens, but we have no new plans for plant closures or shutdowns or anything.
Schultz also responded to reports that it had been named in an alleged price-fixing cartel involving dozens of drug companies in the U.S. He said that, according to Teva's reviews, it had not engaged in any wrongdoing.
We have looked at all our internal information, millions of emails, memos, and so on, and we don't see any evidence whatsoever that we've done anything wrong. So I still regard it as very unlikely that we will have any serious legal consequences of this case against us.
Kari Schultz, CEO of Teva, speaking to Kan 11 News. Coming up in Britain, 3 Conservative MPs resigned from the party to join an independent group set up by defecting Labour MPs. But first, Shlomo Artzi with his son, Ben Artzi, Shir Preda. Goodbye song.
זה שיר פרידה, אז בואי רק אמרי שלום. אני אומר תודה, ואת יודעת שחלום סופו להתגשם. אני אומר תודה ואחר כך נושק, כמו חופים שים עוזר. אני עובר עכשיו בדמעות ובין כאב. אני הולך, זה שיר פרדות, תמיד אומרים בין השורות, שכמו חידות בודות גם הן אינן צורות. אין בי מנוחה, אין בי מנוחה, רוחך שבי גם היא בוכה, כמו חופים שים עוזר. אני עובר עכשיו ממך במעות ובין כאב. אני הולך,
Britain, 3 conservative MPs have resigned from the party to join an independent group set up by former Labour MPs. Anna Soubry, Sarah Walston, and Heidi Allen wrote a joint letter to Prime Minister Theresa May to confirm their departure. May said she was saddened, but her party would always offer decent, moderate, and patriotic politics. The 3, who support a second EU referendum, criticized what they called the government's disastrous handling of Brexit and said that it had undone all the efforts to modernize the Conservatives. The pro-Remain trio will join the new independent group made up of 8 Labour MPs who resigned from their party over its handling of Brexit and anti-Semitism, saying it represented the center ground of British politics. At a press conference today, Anna Soubry said of the Conservative Party, "The battle is over. The other side has won." She called for an end to tribal politics.
We 3 have never been called your so-called typical Tory. Like everyone, we're tired of labels, we're tired of tribalism, and we're tired of British politics being dominated from its extremes. It's time for change, and we are a team with your support that will deliver that change. I also hope it gives courage to members of the government who are deeply concerned about this no deal becoming a real possibility, and it will give them the courage next week to do what frankly some of them should have done a long time ago and be true to what they believe. And if they need to leave government and vote against the party line on Brexit, they've got to do it, because frankly if we have got the courage to do this, they come and follow that.
MP Anna Soubry. Earlier, Joan Ryan became the 8th Labour MP to quit the party in the past 48 hours, citing its intolerance of a culture of anti-Jewish racism. The Enfield North MP said she was horrified, appalled, and angered by Labor's failure to tackle anti-Semitism, saying that its leadership allowed Jews to be abused with impunity. Ryan said she did not believe that Jeremy Corbyn was fit to lead the country. Turning to news back home, the High Court of Justice has rejected outright a petition that asked the court to instruct the Defense Ministry to either cancel or modify credentials that it issued to Israeli arms dealers and security experts operating in South Sudan, and especially cited credentials that were issued to Reserve Major General Yisrael Ziv. The petition was rejected on the grounds that it should have been filed to the Court for Administrative Affairs. The petition was filed yesterday in the name of 50 human rights activists after the U.S. Department of Treasury imposed sanctions on Ziv. The Americans have alleged that he sold $150 million worth of weapons to parties involved in the civil war in South Sudan. Ziv denies the allegations. On the roads in Bnei Brak, an electric bicycle rider in his 30s was seriously hurt when he was struck by a car. He was taken by Magen David Adom to Beilinson Hospital in Bnei Brak. A two-day forum opened in Jerusalem today aimed at fostering grassroots business partnerships between Israeli and Palestinian residents of the West Bank. The forum is the initiative of the organization, the U.S. Israel Education Association, and the Judea-Samaria Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We heard more from Avi Zimmerman, founder and president of the Judea and Samaria Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
The forum is very, very exciting. A lot of effort has gone into making this happen. It is an international forum. It begins with the building blocks, which are, as you mentioned, Israeli and Palestinian business people who, on a day-to-day basis, are trying to find more opportunities to work with one another. However, as you may be aware, the circumstances do not always lend themselves to that. Sometimes the circumstances are challenged because of boycotts that are initiated not by the international community, but rather by the Palestinian Authority. Otherwise, because of security concerns and regulations put in place by Israel. And so that climate needs to be further developed.
Now, already there are joint industrial parks. Is this the same or is this different from that model?
That's correct. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are employed by Israelis at industrial parks and in construction and other positions, really on both sides of the Green Line. We're looking at this from a different angle. The goal here is an eye-to-eye, business-to-business value chain set of relationships so that it won't only be Israelis employing Palestinians, but vice versa as well.
Now, do these partnerships already exist, or that's the aim of this forum, to launch it?
So we have currently roughly 100,000 Palestinians who cross the Green Line on a daily basis. Of those, 30,000 Palestinians who work in business-to-business partnership with Israeli business people. But those are, again, on either side of the Green Line, as opposed to our effort, which is to bring that economic success from the greater Tel Aviv region to the Judea and Samaria region, the region known by most as the West Bank. And so in order to accomplish this, we need to work on the local neighbor-to-neighbor basis. These relationships do exist, but most of them can't be interviewed on your program. They can't really surface so much because the only way to manage those sort of businesses as of today is to do so under the radar so as not to create some sort of friction for Palestinians with the Palestinian Authority.
Can you just give us a sense of some of the kinds of these partnerships and what spheres they are active?
Well, to be careful about it and at the same time give you, like you said, a sense. We're talking about products being sold from one business to another and the logistic challenges, trying to overcome the logistic challenges of doing commerce between one another. What we don't yet have is really another one of the steps that we're looking to implement is shared innovation. So we have a growing number of innovation centers in Judea and Samaria. The Benjamin region has one that's up and coming. The city of Ariel has one. We're looking to something like that in the Gush Etzion region, and ideally outside of Hebron as well, near Kiryat Arba. And there are a number of similar facilities in places like Ramallah. And the question is, how far can we expand those, whether it's a WeWork sort of operation where people work side by side or actually mentored innovation and entrepreneurship where people are in a joint accelerator process. So that's the sort of next step that we're looking to take as well.
What kind of interest has there been from the Palestinian side?
Very, very strong. In fact, the Palestinian interest is only deterred, again, because of their fear of kind of going above board and being known as people working with their Israeli neighbors on business initiatives. Every business is always looking to get to newer and bigger markets. So the bigger markets for the Palestinians are with Israelis, again, on both sides of the Green Line. Israelis, interestingly, are also interested, but they're looking not only to the local Palestinian markets, which, depending on the business, sometimes that can be a primary market. They're also looking to go farther to the east, across the Middle East, and first through Jordan and then beyond. And for the Middle Eastern markets, a lot of the Palestinians have the access which Israelis are looking for.
So ultimately, is the model is an Israeli company and a Palestinian company working in partnership together versus a jointly owned and run company?
It's both, all of the above. We're actually we're considering, and we haven't done anything towards this end yet, but creating some sort of a system for grading what is integrated business. Is it because you're employing both populations or because you're doing business with different populations? I think the ultimate goal is just to understand we're talking about a region, and it's an economic region and not a population-specific economy. And that's an important distinction because, you know, around the world, we wouldn't never speak about a black or white economy or a Latino economy. We're going to talk about a region, a state, a regional economy, whereas here we tend to talk about an Israeli and Palestinian economy. And that's something that's not very productive for the businesses themselves. So we want to talk about a strong regional economy, and whatever it takes, and often it takes these business partnerships, whatever form they take, will be productive for all the people living here.
Now, this initiative has backing from the U.S. administration, from American organizations, also Israeli government ministers. So while you mentioned concern that the Palestinians perhaps have voiced about Palestinian Authority criticism of such initiatives, at the same time, you are giving it a high-profile boost.
Yes, and it's very tricky. There's a lot of things that we won't be able to bring to the fore over the course of this two-day economic or international economic forum because of the reasons that we've just noted. But there are things that can be more in the public eye. But it's important to also distinguish for a moment. This is not a government initiative. This is actually designed to empower the business sector, as a community. And we live in an area and perhaps in a time where there's this perennial sense of uncertainty. What will the political future of this region be? And so we're not putting our faith or our investments into the politics of it. We are removing ourselves from the politics of it, and we're looking specifically to the strength of the business community. And that community needs to, as we just discussed, it needs to be further developed. But the stronger the business community, the stronger and more sustainable the future is for all of the people living here.
Avi Zimmerman, founder and president of the Judea and Samaria Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And this update, Ynet is reporting that the Jewish Home Party Central Committee has approved the proposed deal that promises cabinet portfolios and other political perks in exchange for a joint run with the far-right Otzma Yehudit Party. Before the weather and return headlines, Chemi Rodnil, Ze Oto HaKaitz. It's the same summer.
את נשמתו אל הירח והמזלות הכלבים עונים במקהלה שמתגלגלת בין הרחובות כל מה ששלנו למזכרת שלנו למשמרת לזמנים אחרים ואותו הקיץ בבטיחים את ואותו הקיץ ברחובות ילדים, ואותו הקיץ רק שאנחנו גדלים להאמין. במיטה שלי את חסרה כל כך, השמש והכוכבים, יש לי רגע די צלול של געגוע מתגלגלים מבפנים. כל מה ששלנו למזכרת, שלנו לתפארת, לעולמי עולמים. ואותו הקיץ אבטיחים עתיקים, ואותו הקיץ ברחובות ילדים, ואותו הקיץ רק שאנחנו גדלים להאמין. מופע קבוע והם נכזבים, הכלבים נובחים אחיזנה בין הרגליים, אל ביתם שבים. כל מה ששלנו למזכרת, בדידות שלנו סרט שאין בו צופים. לאותו הקיץ אבטיחים עתיקים, לאותו הקיץ ברחובות ילדים.
Whether you wake up early or go to bed late, WLRI 93FM covers Lancaster current events 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Truly neighborhood coverage, directly from your neighbors. Yet another reason you can rely on WLRI 93FM, Lancaster's news leader.
Every moment can be kind of special. But they could be loud moments, goofy moments, dorky moments, it doesn't matter. Because every time dads like us take a moment like that to spend with our kids, well, it's pretty momentous. So let's take a moment to make a moment. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
We're Lancaster Radio Information.
It's the Stephanie Miller Show.
This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes. 'Cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
morning. The president is the crookiest crook that has ever crooked. Good morning. He is, wow.
Yeah.
Andrew McCabe thinks he might be a Russian accent. Right, Jamie? Right?
So much for
So does our own Malcolm.
Yeah. See,
that egg
America's
works.
in danger, man. The egg's not here. It's in the yard.
I can tell.
You know what?
Jamie,
I
you're
know
right.
where the egg needs to be, around her neck.
Oh, and also we're selling nuclear secrets to Saudi Arabia. No big deal. All right, look who's here. Yeah, look who's... Oh, hi.
That's good coffee.
I take it black, like my man.
Coffee with Carlos sells Rocky.
Have a Zimbabwe latte. I'll have a Kenya cappuccino.
Jim never has a second cup of coffee at home. Mountain grown coffee.
Carlos sells Rocky.
I was going to make espresso.
Handpicked by Juan Valdez.
Coffee with Carlos.
Good to the last drop.
I just want to say that in 12 hours, I raised twice the amount that Kamala did, and half the time, or 44% of the people, 55% of the time, 2020, we're going to win the revolution.
All right, thank
I
you,
want to
Bernie.
thank James
Thank you, Bernie.
Adomian for trying to teach me how to do that impression correctly, but he's the master.
All right, that was fantastic.
1/4 of half the people divided by 3 times 4 is 5.
All right. Are you?
I'm done.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, and see.
Believe me,
Should we just, Travis? Should we get the Bernie people going early? He spent $24 million more than she did last time and lost by 4 million votes. But okay, that's good.
I like Bernie.
All right. Yes.
Run, Bernie, run. I like anybody in the
Yes.
primaries.
Yes, I do too.
Well, I just wish you were a Democrat.
Yeah. Oh, somebody.
then I would support him.
Somebody sent me a gym analogy for you because there's some thought that you might spend some time in the gym.
Did you get that picture I sent you last time, by the way?
No. What?
I sent
Which?
you a text message last. A text exchange.
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
I thought you might like that.
I have
you're keeping secrets. What was the?
Oh, because no, it's just your bugaboo that he doesn't join the party.
Yes.
And so they said it's like the guy that goes to your gym on a buddy pass and hogs all the machines and tells you what you're doing wrong.
Exactly.
Thanks to you now, Stephanie, I have small straight man complex. Had to sandwich me into these giants.
He is.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Carlos.
You're like a little penis mushroom.
Yeah.
He's invited to tell the party what to do when he joins the party.
Well, the people text for Bernie yesterday. They said, "Hi, Travis. It's Rachel. Are you excited about Bernie?" And I was like, "I'm not feeling the burn, Rachel." And then she said, well, who are you planning on supporting? And my response was, a Democratic candidate.
Oh, dear. Oh,
but at least, unlike Schultz, he's going to
we're
run
already
as a
doing
Democrat,
Russia's work. Let's focus, people, on the...
If he gets the Democratic nomination,
Yes, of course.
I will fully support him.
Me too.
Absolutely.
I've said that a million times.
However,
I think
he's
that
not
is
a Democrat.
Stephanie Miller has said it 1 million times, divided by 4. Chris, Democratic Party, by Colonel Sanders.
We've got bigger fish to fry.
Are we gonna?
Yes, Trump.
Exactly.
New York Times article.
Are we gonna have? Is Rain Bernie gonna be making a
Rain Bernie
frequent appearances to discuss math?
Yeah. All right. Wapner is on at 6.
5 minutes to Wapner.
9 Eastern, 3 o'clock Hawaii.
Okay. All right. Travis, I can't even tell what the major stories are anymore, other than that I don't. How is he still in the Oval Office? I don't understand.
What about
this New York Times story? I don't selling nukes to Saudi Arabia so they can make money. Personally, I don't.
Sounds like the Iran-Contra kind of deal.
Yeah.
I mean, someone tweeted yesterday. He's obviously a wholly owned subsidiary of both Russia and Saudi Arabia, and no one. Carlos, why isn't something being done?
Something has got to be did.
Well,
I don't know what has happened.
Lindsay he hasn't been visited by 3 ghosts. The first ghost came. He said, honey, you can't wear that dress. You got to go back outside to your ghost land and redress.
You lost me. The first ghost came.
I don't think that's what the first ghost said. Is that the ghost of Karl Lagerfeld?
Yeah.
Oh.
Too soon?
Too soon.
Well, it was a fashion show. It was a fashion ghost.
Karl Lagerfeld was a bit of an a-hole, though.
But I think it's literally
stirring up
McConnell
controversy.
and the GOP and the Senate are why he's still there.
Yeah. I just, this New York Times story, we have Natasha Bertrand on today, who is fantastic.
My new BFF.
You like these names,
Yes,
Natasha.
who just interviewed Andrew McCabe, and I believe him.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is really just stunning to have to just hear it over and over that, yes, we think the president might be a Russian asset, and that's when we opened the counterintelligence investigation. I mean, and now this latest thing that, of course, he tried to get Whitaker to put in a crony, right, in the SDNY.
Yep.
And who was already recused because he's a Trump donor.
And when I lied about this to Congress 2 weeks ago.
Yes. So, right, Mr.
Has he
Clean.
ever talked to him? Mr. Unclean, I called him.
Wow, imagine how sweaty he's going to be when he comes back to Congress.
Oh, my God.
He's going to be like Aaron in broadcast news.
Yeah.
I got a little flashback for
Is
you.
this
3, 4, and 5.
noticeable?
Yeah, meets Robert Hayes in Airplane.
Blow dryer.
Is this noticeable?
Remember that?
Yes, I do. I love that movie.
They'll have to bring in those dental machines to suck. You know what I mean? Just suck the sweat off him as he.
Can't get that ShamWow guy, isn't he?
Car wash fan.
Yes.
ShamWow guy.
ShamWow. Here you go, Mr. Whitaker. ShamWow.
Oh my God.
That guy looks like an evil Peter Pan. ShamWow. Open the other eye, dude. I'm not buying nothing until you open the other eye.
We have a day on the show. Can I just say, Bob Seskin, Natasha Bertrand, Malcolm Nance, Jill Winebanks. We have a If ever there was a day to discuss Trump being crooky, well, I think that's rarely evident. And you're like wallpaper now. I don't even mention you.
I know.
You don't make the call sheet anymore.
You're just back. He's gone. But there's it's so much crime, so little time with Donald Trump.
Oh, so he. Here's the other thing: is he's like, I never called McCabe's wife a loser. And John tweets, since Trump uses an unsecured cell phone, the intel community, many governments, and organized crime families heard him tell FBI official McCabe that McCabe's wife is a loser.
Yeah.
Okay. How many times would he have been punched if he didn't have Secret Service? Seriously.
Oh, man. I'm just thinking about the omelet guy. He had a chance.
Crotch punched.
Okay. Jim Sciutto tweets, folks calling FBI's actions an attempted coup should be asked why GOP members of the Gang of Eight did not then object when the FBI alerted them to its investigation into the president in 2017, as McCabe asserted. Yeah, he said did not challenge him on the facts, nothing. Sense of resignation from McConnell. Like, if this is such a coup and a witch hunt, why didn't you stop him?
Right. Yep.
Right? Why didn't you say something then? I mean, this is just, okay. Wow. Would you like to, just whatever kind of scary music you'd like for the...
Oh, I thought you were going there.
What's for breakfast, Kellyanne Conway?
Spiders. Master, who was that making your omelet, Master? Should have been me, Master. Spiders and cheese.
Oh, that's new cheese.
It's an omelet.
I love that your scary music is also the Sean Hannity theme.
Yeah. Well, all comes together, doesn't it?
It really does.
In Traderland. Okay. These are the top 7 bombshells, right? This is before we even get to the selling nuclear nukes to Saudi Arabia. What?
I just get a thank you from sending you the
thank you.
Cliff Notes version of that 25-page New York Times article.
I already read the whole thing. Okay.
Don't say
yes.
I don't think of you.
Thank you. I think you think of me, just not in just flattering terms.
Just lay the bad news on this parent.
Pardon?
I don't have time to be a horrible parent to my kids and read all this stuff. So just give me the highlights.
That's why I regurgitated into your mouth like a mama bird. Here you go. Okay. A lot of previously unknown facts, actually. How many counts just in this story are there obstruction of justice? Are we waiting for the numbers at McDonald's? Is that what Congress is doing?
Yeah.
Just like
billions and billions served with indictments.
Okay. 11 billion.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk to Jill Winebanks, among others, about this today. But this is such clear cut. There are so many counts of obstruction of justice now. All you need is corrupt intent. And tell me this isn't corrupt intent. Okay.
Judge
Napolitano said the same thing.
Oh, do we have that?
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
Was that on Fox and Friends or Shep Smith?
That should be the new morning show. Shep and Nap.
Shep and Nap.
Shep and Nap in the morning, everybody.
Good buddy, everybody. It's Shep and Nap.
When Trump is in prison, maybe they'll change things up. And they'll be like, Fox News always told you.
It'll be their new.
He's going to prison.
It'll be their new. What was her late night show? Red Eye.
Red Eye. Shep and Nap, but no Shap.
Shep Nap. Morning show. Shep and no nap. Man.
Yeah, but no Shap. Hero.
All right. Well, number one. Yes, as we said, Trump pressured Whitaker to install a crony to oversee the SDNY investigation. Asked him to put a political appointee, Jeffrey Berman, in charge of the investigation. Whitaker refused, according to the report, because Berman was already recused from the case, infuriating Trump. Attorneys. Here's another one. I think we sort of knew, but confirmation that Trump's lawyers dangled pardons to Manafort and Flynn.
Yeah.
To try to get them not to cooperate Right. Okay. By the way, okay, these are Jill Wymakes questions. But what happens now? Like, what? I guess they can't go back now, but you know what I mean? When this stuff is known, because you go, is this, I don't, okay.
Let's ask Jill.
Yes. I don't know what.
She's the expert.
Okay.
Well, and also she's the one who's like doing this whole like.
But
make
did
the
they
Mueller
in
report.
fact not cooperate because of this now? No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, she's the one who's making the case for make the Mueller report public.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite of what Kellyanne Conway was saying on Cuomo last night, the things that give you nightmares.
What's that, Kellyanne?
Don't make it public, we'll see. Basta.
Yes. It is particularly significant yet curiously ignored, given many experts believe the possibility of a pardon to silence a witness could potentially be seen as obstruction of justice. Potentially?
Potentially?
So that would be, that's 3 more counts? Trying to get Whittaker to put a crony, 2 counts of dangling pardon. That's 3 counts we're up to of obstruction.
3/4 of 4 kinds
Okay,
of
Bernie,
counts.
listen.
Sorry.
Can we focus on the
You
traitor?
talk about numbers, and you have to include me. As a Democrat.
That's not a Democrat.
Ladies and gentlemen, Green Bernie. Okay, hang on. Yes, even though Flynn resigned voluntarily, Trump pushed the falsehood that he asked for Flynn's resignation. Wow, Sean Spicer could be rolling that motorized podium into prison as well.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Yes. The White House lawyers warned Press Secretary Sean Spicer's spreading of misinformation. Oh, they helpfully compiled Spicer's false statements into a memo. So that'll be helpful to Bob Mueller. A lot of that work's already done. Okay. Trump claims Rob Rosenstein told him Michael Cohen investigation had nothing to do with him. It was not about Russia. Now, Trump believes Rosenstein may have deliberately misled him. To which I say, good. How ruthlessly absurd.
Didn't we determine yesterday that's Rosenstein?
Stein.
Okay.
What did I say?
You just said Rosenstein.
Yeah. It's Frankenstein.
It's Rosenstein.
Okay. Okay. Well, real quick. Matt Gaetz, that ass bite, and other Trump allies decided to act.
Matt Gaetz.
Okay. I don't know who wins, him and the Aflac.
Matt Gaetz.
Okay. Yes.
I don't think anyone
Other
wins.
Trump allies decided to actively undermine Mueller. Yeah. He called. Oh, I love that. He called Jim Jordan and told him the party needs to go play offense. See, Jim Jordan knows a lot about the sports.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Not so much about playing defense, too.
He's wrestling with that one right now.
Yeah, he's wrestling with that dilemma. And Trump has gone after Mueller in the Russia investigation more than 1,100 times in public. So that's will probably also be helpful, I'm guessing, in the obstruction
It's
case.
incessant tweeting.
Seems like there are 11 new bombshells every morning coming out of the New York Times.
Oh, did I just read that Putin said that if we put nukes in Europe, that their nukes are they're gonna point him here?
Yep.
Because this doesn't seem like. Maybe he's mad because he's cheating on Russia with Saudi Arabia.
Cuba, Venezuela, where are you going to put him at?
Yeah, getting some of his genetic nuclear material on Saudi Arabia as well. Okay, I'm a little faint already.
Well, just think about last night, President Obama had dinner with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen in San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, isn't that nice? I
miss that sort of thing.
Isn't that nice for him?
I miss that sort of
thing. Malia Obama drinks rosé.
Yes.
That's the important thing. She's friends. And
We're
takes
lucky she doesn't drink
photos.
more with this guy in the White House.
Yeah, and she doesn't like Trump.
Not just rosé, good rosé.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the real bombshell of that story. Whisper Age Rosé does not cost $80. They got robbed. That's the high-end resort fee.
Yeah.
I'll Google it. I've had
Trump's omelet
Whispering
costs
Angel.
more.
You probably
That is
have
shocking.
a delivery of it coming today.
Yes. I can tell you
We
exactly.
got a happy hour podcast.
I can tell you exactly
A
how
good
much.
rosé should cost $8.99
All right, Bernie.
with a 40% discount.
That's a top 1% price. $80 for that bottle.
99% of the people paying $8.99 for rosé are getting ripped off by the government.
Okay, Rain Bernie. I feel like Rain Bernie's going to be back. Sharing spiders with Kellyanne this morning. Okay, 20 minutes after the hour of this portion of the show. Good morning, Eric Bowler.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. My friend who is staying with me, when I start screaming at Chuck Todd during Meet the Press, says, "Can you wait and talk to Eric about this?" Okay. All right. It is. I mean, I know we talk about this every Monday because there's been like more days of crazy since we last spoke over the weekend. But
Right.
the fact that they're still trying to have some kind of false equivalency that, the Republicans, whatever, over the national emergency, but Democrats are also divided. I'm like, oh my God, there is no precedent for where we are now. right? With this fake national emergency, with I don't even know what to say about the Russian asset in the Oval Office, essentially saying that he believes Putin and not our intelligence on North Korea. There is just no. There's no, okay. I don't. Go ahead.
So this is what happens when you have this incremental normalization, right? And so we've been complaining about this since he was inaugurated over 2 years ago. And, there's this constant attempt to normalize. And you do that by not, raising red flags and not being freaked out and not being honest with news consumers that all of this is uncharted territory and unprecedented. And so you do this normalization. Well, Democrats kind of did this, or Obama kind of did this. And the problem is it accumulates over 2 years to the point where we are now, and it's just with this national emergency and then and the Putin in the White House and things like that, we're to the point where the frog is in the boiling water, and we should be, at the impeachment stage, and we should be at another stage.
Right.
But the press is still trying to treat this like, well, it's kind of unusual, but.
Eric, I couldn't believe I was actually listening to the Democrats move too far to the left. Is that really the concern facing America? When I'm like, we have a Russian asset with the nuclear codes. It's not listening to our intelligence. It's listening to Putin. And that's, it literally, they feel like they have to balance the coverage when we are in a constitutional crisis, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. With the Democrats, it's everything that they're trying to portray them as doing is so quaint. So what if the Democratic Party has moved, to the left over the last 4 years, 2 years, or whatever? How does that why is that even relevant to what we're doing in terms of the White House? But look, the press has not wanted to announce a national crisis, a national emergency of the Trump presidency, because then they have to deal with it, right? So if I saw Washington Post, journalists, Trump's wildly incoherent 25th Amendment Rose Garden appearance on Friday, right? And this Washington Post journalist said, well, we all have our bad days.
Oh, God.
And so, why do they do this? Why is there a normalization? Because if they deal with reality, then they have to then, address all this stuff. He's mentally unstable. He's pathological. They don't want to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah.
So the game that's been played for 2 years is they tiptoe up to a line and they
When you hear Stephanie Miller, you know you found Lancaster radio information, WLRI 93 FM.
McCabe or John Brennan or Adam Schiff or anybody, the anonymous New York Times editorials. You tweeted for 8 years, and especially during impeachment, the DC press loved playing armchair psychology regarding Bill Clinton. With Trump, that's just out of bounds. Clearly, anybody that watched that with a duty to warn, right? Hundreds signed this letter. How many people have to warn us? This is a completely unstable lunatic with the nuclear code.
Right. So after the Friday Madhouse edition,
When you hear Stephanie Miller, you know you found Lancaster radio information, WLRI 93 FM.
Stephanie Miller.
Yeah, it is the Stephanie Miller Show. Coffee with Carlos Salazar, Rocky, Bob Seska coming up, Natasha Bertrand, Malcolm Nance, and Jill Winebanks.
Whoa.
Bam, bitches.
6:27.07 a.m.
And of course, Rain Bernie will be here all morning with us. Ed Krasenstein tweets, boom, Fox News' Judge Napolitano. I haven't seen anything like this before. A sitting president of the United States using his allies in Congress to interfere with an ongoing criminal investigation. This breaks new ground. How many GOP congressmen will go down with Trump? Oh,
hopefully all of them.
That's a pleasant, that's a pleasant thought.
I think we can tell which ones Trump has dirt on.
Yes.
Well, we know Lindsay's gone down before.
You would think Jim Jordan would know who's going down. Stephanie Louise Miller. What is wrong with me?
Off to the penalty box.
You're just getting back. You're getting back in the saddle because you were supposed to say, "What is wrong?"
Oh, what is wrong with you?
Thank you.
No, that wasn't good.
All right, all right. You're just getting warmed up.
Okay,
Okay,
more chance.
Andrew McCabe. Here we go.
The purpose of the briefing was to let our congressional leadership know exactly what we'd been doing. Opening a case of this nature, not something that an FBI director, not something that an acting FBI director would do by yourself, right? This was a recommendation that came to me from my team. I reviewed it with our lawyers. I discussed it at length with the Deputy Attorney General, and I told Congress what we had done.
Did anyone object?
That's the important part here, Savannah. No one objected. Not on legal grounds, not on constitutional grounds, and not based on the facts.
I'm sorry. I meant to call for the Shep and Nap show. Shep and Nap in the morning, everybody.
Good, buddy.
In this phone call, the president asked whether Jeffrey Berman, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York and a Trump ally, could be put in charge of the widening investigation, the Cohen investigation, according to several American officials with direct knowledge of the call, asking him, hey, could we put my ally over here in charge of this Cohen thing? Because the Cohen thing had just gone very badly when Cohen testified under oath that the president directed him to make those calls, and in essence, according to the reading of that, making him something of an unindicted co-conspirator.
Yeah, this is the stupidest Watergate ever, right? Because you remember he was like, Rudy called Cohen a good man. Like, they try the same spastic strategy with everybody. Like, let's, talk about what a good guy he is, how honest he is. Let's dangle a pardon. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, let's put a crony in to stop it. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, now he's a rat. And his father-in-law's, I mean, it's...
He tried to run it like his television show.
Yeah, exactly. 29 minutes.
It's also dumb.
Yeah. 29 minutes after the hour. Bob Seska next.
WLRI LP, Gap, Solanco, Octorara, Coatesville, Heckway Valley, and Lampeter, Strasburg. It starts in the morning, but it never stopped the night before. WLRI 93 FM 24-hour community coverage, on air and online. Verbatim reports, direct from the sources. The coverage you'd expect from Lancaster's news leader. WLRI 93 FM, committed to improving, enhancing, and protecting the quality of life for all of Lancaster. Government, education, and civic reporting that goes underreported in the mainstream. Corporate-free public media for all of Lancaster, serving eastern Lancaster County and western Chester County in digital FM stereo. This is WLRI LP in Gap, PA.
When you hear Christian McLaughlin, you know you found Lancaster radio information, WLRI 93 FM.
Stephanie Miller.
Thank you, Instagram, for our rave reviews on our little Chris coming out of the shower, like Bobby in Dallas.
Little skit.
Yeah, a little skit. But, you know, there's always the sticklers. How come he had a towel on and there was no water running, blah, blah, blah. It's like when you do an impression and people go, yeah, well, that mouse that Carlos was doing, it really is a Southern Wales accent. It really
Shopper's on, Vittles is ready. No, it's Vittles. What are Vittles? People get into it.
Yes, they do. But you can see that little skit at Stephanie Miller's Instagram at Stephanie Miller Show.
I saw it.
All right.
Yeah.
You don't want to get sued.
That was the joke, because he still had the paper on the soap. Okay, all right. Anyway, let's one more Shep and Knapp show, everybody.
Matt Whitaker testified under oath just a week or 10 days ago. The president referred to that testimony in answer to the question from one of the reporters, that he had not been asked to influence any decisions that the DOJ was being asked to make.
Well, is that the same thing, though? Because what he said was, could you put this other guy in charge? Could he be put in charge? The semantics often matter.
They do, because there's two potential crimes here for Matt Whitaker. One is actual perjury, lying to the Congress. The other is misleading.
Good God. What was the thing he said? He knew his job was to jump on a grenade for Trump?
Yeah. Right.
Whatever. That just escapes me. Why there are still people willing to go to prison
Why would
for
you
this
protect this guy who's in it for himself?
Yeah. Shep and Knapp, one more. Here we go.
President Trump, if the New York Times is correct, wanted his ally to be in charge of both of those investigations. And Matt Whitaker, to his credit, apparently did not execute that command.
But that phone call, you said that's evident of corrupt intent.
On the part of the president, because he's making a
Would that be obstruction?
Yes.
That was on Fox News,
right?
For those of you paying attention. Okay, enjoy, Lotus. Let's talk to our good friend. We like to dreamy, funky men. Why? Bob Seska joins us now.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special broadcast.
You're cute and I love you, Bob Seska.
Where you coming from?
Bob is calling us from
Washington. You Seska things.
Go ahead.
Washington, D.C. Just follow the money.
Hello, Bob.
Good morning, everybody. Oh, my God. Is that Chris Lavoie?
Hi, Bob.
Holy cow.
I'm here permanently.
I'm waiting for traffic to my podcast to just increase by like 1,000-fold.
Go subscribe to the Bob Seska Show on iTunes. It is the best podcast out there besides the Stephanie Miller Happy Hour.
375 new viewers right at the spot.
Okay. Thank you. Rain Bernie approved. Bob Seska, hey, we were just focusing on the president being a Russian asset and also selling nuclear secrets to Saudi Arabia to profit personally. When you say, holy hell, McCabe on Lawrence right now just said, Trump, Venezuela has the oil. Why aren't we at war with them?
Yeah. You know what? I might be a little wired this morning, Stephanie, because I'm still full of electricity from the heart defibrillators that I had to use last night while watching that interview. My God.
Yeah.
My God.
We may bomb a country he can't even pronounce. I don't know if you heard that thing yesterday. He cannot pronounce.
Oh my God, he couldn't say Venezuela. He needed 3 tries to get Venezuela right during a speech about Venezuela.
Right.
God bless Venezuela.
Yeah. Hang on, we have it. Hang on. I think we have it here. Hang on.
But Oscar was gunned down and killed by Venezuelans, so you know this very well. You all know the story. A few weeks ago, on January 23rd, Venezuela's National Assembly, they are risking their lives and Venezuela's future.
All right. My fear is that in bombing Venezuela, we might accidentally hit Fluff Badar.
Here's a tip for dictators. If you want to go to war in another country, at least make sure you can pronounce the name of that country.
Yes. Mr. President, we've mistakenly hit
Barcelona.
Okay.
Charlie Brown's teacher. We are going to war with that.
I mean, who knew that you could flummox all of the red hats, the entire Trump cabal, just by feeding them diphthongs?
Right.
Yes. Bob, where do we start this morning exactly? You tweeted, "I don't care, I believe Putin." That could be Trump's 2020 campaign slogan if he's still a free man.
Yeah.
Let's just say.
In fact, I did some HTML jujitsu the other day and actually was able to get a copy of my own of the front page of Donald Trump's website where I could just edit the text and then make a graphic of it to put up. I had a lot of fun doing that. So I made this slogan. I made the official slogan for the Trump campaign. I don't care, I believe Putin, which should, I mean, we're joking about it, but it should terrify us all.
Yeah. Can we just let's just, of all the chilling things we've heard in the last few days, let's just listen to Andrew McCabe again say this.
We had information that led us to believe that there might be a threat to national security. In this case, that the president himself might in fact be a threat to the United States national security.
Right. And he doesn't believe his own national security apparatus. He doesn't believe his own intelligence community. In fact, during that discussion about, or when the topic of Venezuela came up in that Andrew McCabe interview, McCabe had gone to the Oval Office to brief Donald Trump on those Russian compounds, I think in Maryland, and I think there's another one in New Jersey, that Barack Obama booted all the Russians out of those places, and then Trump invited them back in. But during a briefing about that with FBI agents, that's when Trump brought up going to war against Venezuela because they have all the oil. I mean, it's... So that's what they're going, what is wrong with you? And again, the whole world is going to the United States. What is wrong with you?
How many times did they?
What's wrong with you?
How many times did they have to tell him when he said that about Iraq? No, you can't take their oil. That's a war crime. It's like you just okay.
So what we're seeing is just example after example of all of these guys, whether it's Roger Stone or Donald Trump Jr. or Donald Trump himself or the entire group. What they're trying to do and what they continuously try to do is apply the performance art they get from Fox News Channel onto the real world. And they're discovering, and the people around them are discovering, that doesn't work. It's almost like if a doctor were to go into the hospital where they work and suddenly they start behaving like Dr. House MD, and then everyone around them goes, what's wrong with Dr. So-and-so? Why is he acting like that?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. That's why Roger Stone is in trouble, because he thought, well, I can just continue to attack this judge and put crosshairs next to her head, and I'll be okay because it works on Fox News Channel. What could possibly go wrong? And of course now, on Thursday, he's probably going to go to jail.
Rick Wilson said it's Wednesday, or as I like to call it, Roger Stone's last 24 hours of freedom. That's a happy thought, at least.
I'm sure those inmates are going to leave no stone unturned.
I love your trolling of Trader Tot. You said, my favorite video of the day, Junior, was your syphilitic dad in Miami delivering a speech about Venezuela in which he can't pronounce Venezuela.
Right.
I don't know, just like referring to him as syphilitic. That was a nice touch.
This is my favorite new hobby, Stephanie. I love more than life itself trolling Donald Trump Jr. And in fact, the first thing I did this morning after rolling out of bed was to Google the word pomade so I could troll him with accurate spelling.
Oh, brother, we're out there. Where's my pomade?
You also made a good point, Bob, on Twitter. You said the entire population of the Fox News fantasy cult believes the 25th Amendment is the same as a coup. The 25th is there for a reason. So is the impeachment language and the Electoral College section. Invoking any of those remedies against crackpots is perfectly constitutional. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, again, that's another example of stuff that they can usually say on Fox News Channel and get away with, and then when they say it in the real world, everyone's going, what?
Right.
The 25th Amendment isn't constitutional. It's the 25th Amendment to the Constitution. How could it not be constitutional? Whatever.
Whatever. Okay. You have waded into the Bernie waters. You said I was ambivalent about 2016 until Bernie started feeding anti-Hillary attack lines to Trump, rigged, etc. And I guess you were retweeting. Many Dems and even some longtime supporters are exasperated by Sanders' decision, but people close to him said he was always likely to run. They say he came too close last time to just walk away and has the energy to do it. Firmly believes the Dem party's moving toward his ideology. And you just said, number one, he didn't get that close. Number two, trying again won't improve his chances, diminishing returns, etc. Number three, like last time, he'll only serve to damage the rest of the field and especially the eventual nominee.
The main thing with Bernie that I have an issue with, and by the way, last time, 2016, I kind of sat out that shovel fight between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and people still blamed me for being a Hillary shill. So, I mean, at this point, I'm just going to say what I need to say about Bernie Sanders. I'm going to try to be fair with what I say, my criticisms, if there are any, and there are some, but I'm not going to restrain myself from talking about Bernie Sanders just because his bullies are out all over social media, jumping into the mentions of anyone who says anything negative about him. But the main thing...
And now we know Russia's also involved. You know, I mean, we can talk to Malcolm Nance about it. They jumped in on the Bernie stuff yesterday. They jumped in on Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, it's again... this is to divide us. This is exactly what they're trying to continue to do. Wasn't a report, Travis? There's another whole front that we're being attacked. Oh, think tanks. Russia is attacking think tanks. I mean, we are under active attack still by Russia.
Right, and on top of that, and this is kind of related to possible Russian influence in all of this, is the first thing that Bernie Sanders did with regard to the rest of the Democratic field was to, once again, and he's violating the prime directive, I think, if you're a candidate running for the nomination of a particular party, is what he's doing and what he did last time, in fact, was to attack the other Democrats using language and talking points that can very easily be co-opted by Donald Trump and recycled, again and again and again. Bernie Sanders was the one where, 2 years ago, 2016, Bernie Sanders was the one who created the rigged election or the rigged system talking point, which Donald Trump picked up and turned it against Hillary Clinton during the general election. There were numerous other occasions sort of like that, and Bernie Sanders yesterday, when he announced his candidacy, said something to the effect of, doing this demonization of quote-unquote identity politics by saying, oh, you don't want to vote for those people just because they're women and they're black. Make sure you vote for me because I'm not a woman or a black.
Oh, dear.
And so, and so that's something that the Republicans will absolutely co-opt and recycle.
Well, I think one thing,
of their things too.
Yeah, I think in general, Bob, is sort of what you refer to is just that I think we all generally have a 2016 fatigue, so I don't know. I would say, like you say, let's step back and watch fairly and let the debates, But I think also I remember Susan Sarandon saying, "Oh, Bernie has no ego in this," and it's just like, come on, let's because he said he won't run if there was someone better. So you're telling me in this 20-person field, he doesn't think there's anybody better?
You don't get to that level of politics without having a large ego. Everybody in Congress has a large ego,
right?
So for her to say that is a lie,
right?
It is exactly right. It's a huge myth. I mean, I always loved it when people would say, "Oh, Barack Obama, he's got such a huge ego." Any of these people who decide they can run for president at some point looked themselves in the mirror and went, "Yeah, I could be president."
Yeah.
I mean, what does that kind of attitude require to be able to say, "I can tell the world, I want to be leader of the world."
Right.
Yeah.
It's a requirement of the job to have a large ego.
Yeah. I don't have that kind of self-esteem. I don't look in a mirror and say I could be leader of the free world. I look in the mirror and say that is a little lady that very likely will die alone and be eaten by her dogs.
I just look in the mirror and say, how am I going to troll Don Jr. today?
Now, that's a goal we all need.
I could fully support that.
All right. Chris Lavoie, I forget, what was the podcast you recommend?
The Bob Cesca Show, available on iTunes and wherever you can download podcasts.
I recommend it as well.
I'm pumping that into my veins like black tar.
It's the second best podcast behind the Stephanie Miller Happy Hour.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Speaking of politicians, all right. Love you, Bob. See you next week.
Okay, love you. Bye-bye.
There, bye-bye. That's a lot of man meat on this show today, Travis. We're wall-to-wall man meat.
We are testosterone up.
Right? Yes. 47 minutes after the hour, we roll along. Coffee with Carlos on the Stephanie Miller Show.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious...
It's the Stephanie Miller Show.
You speaking of who's going to go down around him, you tweeted they're trying to find out if the president directed people to lie, because what Sarah Sanders said in the press conference on August 1st in 2017 was that the president did not dictate the statement regarding the Trump Tower meeting when in fact he did. And she's clearly not the only one he directed to lie, right? We have these other lawyers in terms of the payoffs to the women, right? In addition to Michael Cohen. Yeah.
In addition to Michael Cohen. And, his own lawyer came out on Meet the Press. What was that guy's name? I'm suddenly having a brain freeze. His lawyer came out on Meet the Press and said the president had nothing to do with dictating the Trump Tower statement. He was at the G20 and was on a plane. Absolutely not. That was done by Don Jr. Well, that's not true.
Right.
That wasn't true either. And the president had to have told him that.
Right.
That was a lie. And now this week we also find out, which is a separate branch of this whole president telling people to lie, that lawyers have been lying about to Cummings, and Cummings is investigating those other lawyers having to do with the lies with his FEC filing.
Yeah,
it's just it's a whole other branch of this huge tree of deception.
Yeah, that's why it's just the lawyers on our side are better. Like, I sense if you were my lawyer and I tried to get you to lie, you would say you're an idiot. No, are you high?
Yeah. Crack is bad.
Cynthia, your colleague Jill Winebanks and I forget who the Clinton, lawyer. You know, they wrote a piece about how this has got to be public. We really should have public hearings, right? I mean, because it just, at this point, explain how this is different. I mean, I just can't believe we went through what we went through, and that's when you and I first met each other. It was during this whole Clinton investigation, which was about a BJ. I mean, which was about his private life. But then we had the independent counsel statute, right, which is different than what we have now. And we have an attorney general who is not committing to make this report public. And, you know, of course, Jill and others argue that in Watergate, that's what the American people are entitled to, right, are a full airing of the facts.
Right. Well, we're going to get a full airing of the facts. There's just too much political pressure. How that exactly works, is it because we have hearings after and the report and Mueller and Weissman, who, by the way, this guy Weissman, he does not leave anything on the field. Yeah. It's not like they're going to walk away and just go, throw up their arms.
Yeah, never mind. Right.
Never mind. Yeah, we're not going to have any never mind from this pair. Anyway, first of all, we're going to have speaking indictments, and there's a lot of information that is currently redacted, which at some point will be unredacted, and we'll have hearings. Schiff will have hearings. Mueller will be subpoenaed. I mean, it's all going to come out. Whether or not it's not going to come out in a neat little binder like that crazy Star report was with weird footnotes. But it is going to all come out. I believe that with my heart and soul.
Yeah. Boy, I hope so. Well, as we discussed last time, even if you have to scale the walls of the Justice Department and get it yourself,
I'm getting it.
So we've already bought suction cups for you.
Frangela will drive the getaway car.
There you go. We'll have the car running.
I like them in blue and white, please.
All right. You got it. We'll have the car running. Okay. Cynthia, thanks as always for taking time. We appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, there she goes. Our legal Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm. I like her.
Lasso of truth.
I've never talked to her before. I like her.
Yeah, she's fat. Well, this is when I met her when I hosted Equal Time when she was on in this ridiculous Clinton thing. We'll talk to Jill tomorrow about this piece she wrote that you remember. Chris and I. We had the only successful liberal radio show in the country. Remember?
We did.
But A, what's not funny about a BJ? B, 70% of the American people agreed with us. Why are we investigating the president for his personal life?
Exactly.
Right. What does this have to do? And the fact that we went...
Stephanie Miller.
It is the Stephanie Miller Show. Coffee with Carlos. How's Rocky? We were talking about frozen cave woman lawyer, Amy
Klobuchar. Miss Klobuchar says
that's going to be his favorite name.
Yeah. Oh, anyway. You were making a serious point though about her, what
her realisticness in terms of paying for things. I am for free education and paying for it with ferries. Ms. Klobuchar seems to think that we should ease the student loans and approach this in a moderate fashion. I say we pay for college by huge rallies.
All right, she's gonna. You're right. She's gonna get Hillary though. Remember that thing about Bernie? Yes. Everyone should have a pony. Hillary, how are we gonna pay for that? Bernie. Hillary hates ponies.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, everybody just remain calm.
I feel a little bit of the burn. I get it. It's primaries.
I'm happy. I'm thrilled with.
Throw them all in the pot.
I'm nervous about Tulsi Gabbard for a bunch of reasons. We'll talk to Malcolm Lance.
There's that.
Anybody else?
Don't worry, she'll straighten you out.
I see what you did there? That's funny. That's a conversion therapy joke, which is funny to the
So
gays.
hysterical.
Okay. Jeff Tiedrich tweets, so the compromised Russian asset and his over-leveraged idiot son-in-law and the how is he not already in jail treason general are quietly transferring nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia. Knock me over with a bone saw. I didn't see this coming. And hurry the up, Mueller. Yes. Okay. Monty in Florida. Hello, Monty. Welcome.
I want a quick comment for a question for Carlos. Carlos, you remember a few years ago when Rick Pitino was running a brothel at Louisville University, correct?
Pretty much, yep.
Okay. For those who don't know, I know people aren't sports fans who listen to the show. Rick Pitino basically had a brothel for recruits and their parents, their dads or guardians to come in, and they would, perform sex with them and try to get them to come to the school.
Yes.
Now, there's a thing in college called lack of institutional control. What that means is that if one of your players or your coaches is in trouble, let's say they get a DUI, they commit sexual harassment, you can't use the excuse, I didn't know. It's called lack of institutional control, and this is one of the reasons why many college coaches are now getting fired.
Yep.
So my point is, and the media has done a terrible job on this, everyone Trump has hired is an absolute criminal, is a disgrace, is going in jail. So we're holding college coaches more accountable than Donald Trump, because all Sarah Sanders and Kellyanne Conway says is this has nothing to do with the president. He's supposed to be a businessman, and these are the people he hires, and no one calls them out on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't fall far from the
Trump
net.
has nothing to do with the Trump campaign, Trump Tower, Trump Organization, Trump Foundation.
These people.
Yeah.
I mean, he handpicked them, so he's responsible, and no one calls him out on it.
Yep. Flynn and Manafort. He's right. Yeah. Patino also paid for allegedly an abortion too.
Yeah.
Oh.
By the way, I know who Rick Pitino is.
Pay the athletes is what I'm saying.
He was mansplaining
Get rid
sports
of college
to me.
corruption like that.
I know the sporting people who sport, some of them.
But he's I never knew these people. I don't know the names. Cohen, never heard of him. Ivanka, never heard of her. Melania, don't know her. Barron.
Jennifer Rubin with a good point said, let me get this straight. The DOJ told Republicans Trump was a suspected Russian spy, and they still supported him for president. Thinking of a word for that. I know. Traitors.
Yeah, he's in the traitors.
Traitors. Craig in New Orleans. Hello, Craig.
Hi, hi, Stephanie. Good morning. I want to say thank you for taking my call. So, a couple of really quick points. One, I find it's rather odd and kind of slightly concerning that this whole Jesse Smollett thing has just been swept under the rug.
How has it been swept under the rug?
Well, God
people have been covering it everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. I smell. Do we have Trollbegon? Do we still have Trollbegon to spray?
Trollbegon.
So after a few years of doing this, don't you just go?
Chris took it all to Palm Springs with him. I thought he was bringing
basically,
it
wasn't the media just reporting what they were hearing at the moment? So they were reporting it. It was
just
not the media. It was people jumping to conclusions from what the media was reporting based on information. And
the real threat to America is Jussie Smollett and Malia Obama drinking rosé.
Did we go into an illegal war based on false intelligence that I knew wasn't real, but most of Congress thought it was real?
I don't know. This seems somewhat more important. Andrew McCabe yesterday.
We had a number of very concerning things that we were considering at the time. One of them was the fact that the president, in our view, had gone to extreme measures to potentially negatively impact, possibly turn off our investigation of Russian meddling into the election and Russian coordination with his campaign.
No collusion.
Amy in Chattanooga. Hello, Amy.
How are you doing, Stephanie?
Hi, go ahead.
Love you, love everybody on this show.
Thank you.
Thank you for what you do. Just a quick comment about Bernie. I voted for him in the primaries, but it was almost like a protest vote just because of the Medicare for All and to send a message. It was just so woefully disappointing after Hillary gained the nomination that he wouldn't support her. I don't think he's going to have the same support in this next cycle because there's so many other candidates out there talking about these things. So I think that it's going to hurt his momentum. And I hope that perhaps maybe there's a candidate, a somebody polling at 1% who's in the debate, who will be a kamikaze, frankly, to challenge.
Well, I just want to,
all these Russian connections.
I'd like to just, what did we say yesterday? Go into it with an open mind and an open heart, right? Yep. Because we'll see. We haven't even. This is so early. I just want to get the trailer out of the way from the nuclear stuff. Okay. 58 minutes after the hour. Natasha Bertrand next.
It's the Stephanie Miller Show.
This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song. And I don't really care if nobody else believes. 'Cause I've still got a lot of fight left in me.
It is the Stephanie Miller Show. Coffee with Carlos Alzraki.
We're trying to keep up with all the wonderful news about our guy in the White House.
Yeah. Travis, how much did I nerd out when, Malcolm Nance got booked on Real Time last minute, so he invited Frangela and I to go.
We saw the picture.
So I was walking to his dressing room with him, and I look in a dressing room, and there is Natasha Bertrand.
What?
Spazzed the out
As
completely.
You do.
Yeah. Yeah, and she still agreed to come on the show. I don't know why. Huge fan from The Atlantic, unbelievable journalist on this Trump-Russia thing and everything else. She joins us now. Good morning, Natasha.
Hi, Stephanie.
Thanks for not having me freak you out so much that you would never return my call.
Of course, I'm happy to be on.
It is just, there are people like you that have been out front from the beginning, just like, with the clarion call, right? I mean, your interview with Andrew McCabe, didn't you just sitting there go, oh my God, like some of the things he's saying, right?
It's crazy, yeah. I mean, for him to say that he's not sure whether or not Trump is a Russian asset, I mean, I feel like we're going to look back on this period and just say, what were we thinking? We were not panicking nearly enough about, what these career FBI and DOJ officials are saying about the president of the United States. It's really shocking.
Well, yeah. There's so many. Your tweets are, you said we had to cut for length, but McCabe told me that his guess is that the White House immediately knew the steps that I took after Jim got fired and the cases I opened because of Nunes. When I was surprised to see Nunes at the briefing, I knew it would happen very quickly. I mean, I think the question at the end of the day, Natasha, is how many Republicans might go down with him?
It's hard to say whether or not there are any Republicans that are, directly complicit in the Russian interference. People have speculated that perhaps Devin Nunes is compromised in some way just by virtue of his association with the Trump campaign and then Trump transition. But yeah, I mean, it's a good question when you're thinking about what Devin Nunes may have told the president about the FBI investigation, because he was part of that Gang of Eight that was briefed about, the counterintelligence investigation that was opened against the president to see whether or not he was acting at Russia's behalf. And if there is any evidence that he went back and relayed that to the subject of the investigation, then that would be extremely problematic and potentially legally problematic for him too.
For as much as you cover this, what struck you the most in interviewing him? Because obviously the White House going out of its way, to talk about his credibility. I find him incredibly credible. What did you think?
Yeah, he's a very measured, cautious and tempered person. At least that's how he comes across in his interview with me and his interview since on TV. That's really what struck me the most, is that, especially in the tone of his book as well, the things that he says come across as very credible because he does not try to overstate them. He doesn't try to sound alarmist about any of the things that the FBI was doing after Comey was fired. He's just very careful in how he chooses his words. And, when I was sitting with him, what struck me also is that he's not angry. Well, he is angry at the president, but he's not. This isn't retribution for him necessarily. This is his chance to tell his side of the story about what happened in those chaotic 8 days after Comey was fired and why the Bureau did decide to open this case to see whether or not the president was a Russian asset. So, I think that obviously the questions about his credibility will continue to swirl just because he did apparently, mislead the Inspector General about his conversations with the press. But ultimately, those lies have nothing to do, right, with what he's talking about now, which are facts that have been actually reported since and that have been corroborated by various people.
Well, and I think, and you addressed that at the beginning of your piece in the Atlantic, Natasha, that they tried to. Oh, this is an emotional thing that they did because of Comey, and but you write. Andrew McCabe told me in an interview that concerns about Trump had been building for some time, and he was convinced the FBI would have been justified in opening a case against him. We felt like we had credible, articulable facts to indicate that a threat to national security may exist. I mean, that is just stunning.
I think that was the headline that came out of that. The fact that it wasn't just a reaction to Comey's firing that led the FBI to open this investigation. It was actually, the Comey's firing combined with everything else they had already seen, collected, gleaned from their investigation of the Trump campaign, which had opened, nearly a year before. So when he said that, this concern about whether the president was a national security threat had actually been building for months beforehand, I was like, okay, can you go into that a bit more? Because it just seems like that would totally debunk any arguments that this was perhaps an overreaction to the firing of someone who was actually pretty beloved at the FBI.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Natasha. If anything, we have underreacted to what I think we're going to find out at the end of the day. Ironically, too, I didn't know this till I read your piece. McCabe spent his first 10 years at the Bureau in New York City investigating Russian organized crime, and said, it occurred to me on a number of occasions, Donald Trump and I know some of the same people.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And that's actually, his book kind of begins and ends, with Trump in that respect. It's pretty amazing. It kind of mirrors the arc of his career. But yeah, and I asked him, also this is something that we didn't get to put in the end interview, but I asked him, do you think that maybe you're being singled out by Trump and targeted because he's aware that you have this expertise in, pursuing Russian organized crime, and that you have this background? And he said, it's definitely possible. I'm aware that he and I know some of the same people, that I have encountered, the Russian mobsters that were living in Trump Tower before. But that also gives him a singular insight into what Mueller is doing, which is kind of building this case from the ground up, like you would pursue an organized crime family, like you would go after the head of a mafia family.
Right.
And so he saw a lot of familiar patterns in what Mueller is doing, and he said there's no reason for him to believe that the case against the president himself is closed.
Yeah. You also brought up, which is interesting, that he didn't. You talk about the Rosenstein wearing a wire, and them talking about the 25th Amendment in the book. And you asked him that, and he said neither issue is mentioned because I felt like both were so inflammatory and could become distracting. Right? He said I think it's illustrative of the conditions we were trying to navigate at the time. It was absolutely crazy. The world was upside down. I mean, it does sound like from your interview with him, Natasha, that even he and the other people at the top had a really hard time absorbing what they were seeing, because a lot of this was in the open. They were talking about him meeting with the Russians in the Oval Office the day after he fired Comey, and he said it was the latest in a string of head-scratching, completely shocking events.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was just this was a moment for them where they had to step back and ask, are the president's interests aligned with the United States' interest, or are they aligned with Russia's? And that, I think, was a really unprecedented question, obviously, for them to be confronted with. And that is ultimately what led them to determine that they had a predicate to open this investigation. But, he says the 25th Amendment stuff was brought up in passing, that there were no meetings about it. The wire, though, is different. That is something that was actively considered. But again, they went through the normal process that they would before, pursuing any kind of investigative technique. They went to the counsel for the FBI, the general counsel, and they asked, is this something that we could even do legally? And the general counsel at the time said, it's a really bad idea. Like, don't go there. And they didn't. So this idea that they were kind of overstepping their authority, abusing their power, it really doesn't add up, especially when you consider that they briefed Congress about the issue.
Well, yeah. I mean, Natasha, part of the, fascinating thing about your interview with him is us hearing about what this must have been like. He talks about the briefer briefed him on North Korea,